He's a cute little guy, isn't he? It's a great name, too. This is the Lowenmensch. German is a fun language. I don't speak it, but it's fun to pronounce because they really have... Sorry if I spit on anyone. Lowenmensch! The lion man. Lowen, lion, mensch, man. Give or take 40,000 years old. Impressive. 40,000 years old. Found, well, with a name like Lowenmensch, where do we think it was found? Germany. Southern Germany. Not too, I think it was actually found, fragments of it were found in 1939 in southern Germany. They were in a cave, and somebody found them in a cave. Unfortunately, Germany in 1939 had other things on the agenda, so this didn't really make the top line news. And somebody collected those little pieces and sent them somewhere, and then they got back to what they were really doing. But over the course of about 30 years or so, people started putting those little pieces together, and they came up with Lowenmensch. I want to get this right. It is about a foot tall, about 12.2 inches according to this. It is obviously the face of a lion or lion-like creature and the body of a human. Undetermined gender, but human body, lion or leonine-ish face, head. It is the oldest confirmed example of figurative art. It's not just decoration. It has no utility. It's not a tool for something. It is strictly a work of art. And it seems to represent something that does not exist except in an idea. Because 40,000 years ago, you know, we all changed with evolution, but very few of us had lion heads. 40,000 years. People suddenly decided, now I can make this little figure, but what if I put a lion's head on it? I've never seen anything like that. That's crazy. Why would you do that? I don't know. And thus, art. It is possibly a religious icon. We don't know. There's certainly similar works found from around that same era that suggests, you know, this could have sort of a shamanistic value. We don't need to go too deep into that. Certainly, it would suggest, just on first blush here, that there was a sense of a porous distinction between the human and animal worlds. Maybe that's a sense of how brutal life was at the time. Maybe this is aspirational. I need to become ferocious like an animal to survive. It is carved very significantly out of the tusk of a mammoth, the ancient forebear of today's elephant, the largest animal they would have known. It is a lion. no longer so popular in southern Germany, to be sure. Most scholars believe this is evidence of a mountain lion that is perhaps now extinct, not the necessarily full-maned African lions that we know. The largest animal that they knew, and the most ferocious predator that they knew. Is that aspirational? Is that them saying, you know, I wish I were that strong. I wish I were that intimidating. I wish I could be that apex. Or maybe it's not aspirational, maybe it's a statement of some ego. I am that ferocious. I am that large in my mind. I command this world like those two fierce animals combined. We don't know. We don't know what was going through the head of whoever carved it. But bear in mind this. This has been pieced together from fragments, as I said. There are spaces between the arms and the body. The legs are separate. There is reasonable, it's a remarkably long torso for anything remotely humanoid, but there's reasonable detail in here as a sculpture. Scholars have studied this, and they estimate that roughly, because I don't know how many in here have ever carved ivory before, it's a little labor intensive. The estimate from researchers is that it took someone roughly 400 hours to complete this one figurine. 400 hours. That is not, I'm bored today and feel like whittling a little. That's an investment in time. That's a major investment by someone who probably was respected enough within his small group to do that work. 400 hours, granted, you know, you could do it in your off hours, however many of those you get, but as a hunter-gatherer civilization like they were, living in a cave, you don't get a lot of kickback time. You're not punching a clock at the end of the day and then going home and, you know, popping the mini fridge and settling into the lazy boy. 400 hours for a people whose lifespan was probably roughly 30 years means that this person, whoever carved it, even if it's a couple of people, were probably singled out to do so because of a special skill. They were identified by their community as someone with a talent. And they can be trusted to create this for whatever purpose. Who knows? Maybe it was just a toy for the children. But 400 hours? I don't know. These are the sorts of questions that start to bring that society alive to us. Yes, they're primitives. They're living in a cave. I think it's late Paleolithic era or something. I'm not even sure. It's not a monumental achievement. It's a little toy, roughly the size of this water bottle. But think of the imaginative leap that this took. To say, I'm going to make this a representation of something that I only know in my mind. I'm going to take an image that I have and make something out of it. The first time that we have any record of this ever being done. Cave paintings from roughly the same era, roughly, all representations of what they see out there in the world, outside their cave. Ah, I see animals. Bison, horses, cows. Here, something totally unique. Whoever spent that 400 hours invented art. This is where we get dirty. Oh, yeah. A couple centuries later, what are we talking about? Roughly 2800 BCE, a fleet 10,000 years after Lowenmensch, Venus of Willendorf, another German. What's it with the Germans? Good climate for preserving, I'll say that. You guys seem to recognize this to a certain degree. It's fairly well established. We've had it for a little bit longer than Lowenmensch, so it's a little bit more familiar. Of course, Willendorf, another German, found in southern Austria. It is assumed to be an icon of fertility. Why would this be assumed to be an icon of fertility? Yes?
If you're less fertile, you get to eat a lot, or you have enough to eat, and I don't know, like it looks.
I think you're confusing a few bodily functions here.
Okay, wait.
Fertility, not so much about snacking. Although, you got to keep up your strength. In the back, what's your name?
Sunny.
Hi.
It's woman's bodies.
Yeah, woman's body. So, must be about fertility. Sad to say, yeah. Question? No. What?
No, I just want to say something about it. It's like a mother god. Like they probably like look at the god and the mother. So,
Sure.
Yeah, that's why.
There is a rich tradition of religious iconography about the goddess of fertility, Venus. A later tradition slapped onto this after the fact, but it is about a goddess figure. Anybody else?
Well, maybe because like she's not like super skinny. She has enough. She eats enough to provide nutrition to a baby.
That is a baby machine right there.
Yeah.
Not to get crude. I think that ship has sailed. But the large breasts, what are they for?
For feeding babies.
Yeah. Don't tell that to the Victoria's Secret people. And then the hips. Those hips are birthing hips. They can squeeze them out. Cluing into what was said before. Of course it's about fertility. It's a woman's body. What suggests that limitation? What directs you to that interpretation? Aside from the breasts. Aside from that, what about her or about this suggests just that function and nothing else? She's not a multitasker.
Well, if you go by how women are really pictured, back then they didn't really have any status, or they wouldn't really put a woman as being like, God or whatever. So her purpose would be to.
There were women goddesses, especially in the fertility goddess thing. We're talking about a way early, largely polytheistic thing. What's your name?
Ademi.
Hi, Ademi.
Hello. So the statue doesn't have, like, her head is covered and she doesn't have hands, and it means that she like doesn't do it. She doesn't have another purpose. She only has a body, like breast, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like her only function is to carry children and give birth to children, and yeah.
She's ideally designed for that one purpose, it would seem. What was the follow-up?
I was gonna say the exact same.
Okay.
What if this statue is not about the fertility, but their way of depicting person itself? The statue doesn't have a face, and in the ancient time they didn't have mirrors, so they couldn't depict themselves. Plus, the way how she's placing her hands, it's like the person how he sees himself, she sees himself, herself.
Well, hands. I don't know if she has hands.
I don't think she.
I don't have a rear image on this, and I haven't seen one in a while. So I would say that the hands are tools. Essentially, they are for doing certain things, and generally speaking, you don't need them for squirting out the youngins in the back.
I was just gonna say, I don't think she made it herself. Someone probably made it.
I don't think this is anybody's self-portrait. I think this is probably a goddess figurine. I think it's probably, again, supposed to be a representation of something that does not exist on Earth. That leap into saying, what is there beyond our sight that we can conjure? You, what's your name?
Daniel.
Hi, Daniel.
Venus is a Roman goddess of love and beauty, which is also in Greek goddess Aphrodite,
Right.
the goddess of love, who is the mother of Cupid
Yes.
in that sense. So it all sort of derives toward this sense of trying to stimulate an economy, so to speak. Economy of people.
Okay.
Stimulate.
Okay. I would caution about reading too much into the name because it's not like it was carved anywhere on here. And the Greek and Roman civilizations that you're talking about are coming way later.
I know.
But the people who found this ascribe that to it because they are reading into it. Well, okay, in this ancient world, there were already these figures of representations of beauty. And what makes a woman beautiful? Baby making. There was a hand.
Yeah.
Hi.
I was just gonna say that the statue also doesn't have feet. Like her legs are like halfway.
I think it's broken.
Well, yeah, that kind of looks like it's broken. I don't think you can read too much into that. I don't think any of these are designed to be freestanding. Even Lowenmensch had like a little like stick up his butt holding him up. That kind of technology for sculpture really wouldn't get developed for a long time ahead. And plus, this was, I mean, she looks quite large here, but it's actually like a little tiny thing. Lowenmensch would totally tower over her. She's only like 4 inches tall. Hi.
I was also thinking it might be in that time, since there was agricultural mainly, like everybody used to cultivate, and they used to think like as a woman, the way you are giving birth to a child, so praying to a goddess might be a representation of praying to a person who would give them more like crops and
Yeah.
foods, like
Fertility
yeah.
it goes in a couple of different ways. It's not just about, the kids. It's about the earth itself, the earth goddess, and it's not that hard to see a little bit of a globe form here. The earth goddess bearing fruit and bringing forth life in a grander sense. We have touched on this lightly, but I let it pass. No face. No expression. It's much easier to objectify her and simplify her to the simple task of, you're there for the babies. When you don't have a face. When it is, I don't know if this is covered or if this is supposed to be hair. I don't know if she's wearing a hat or if there's just no face at all. What that does, and always think in terms of what this does. None of it is accidental. For me, I look at that and say, well, okay, they didn't want to put a face on there because then it universalizes it. If I decided, well, you know, I gotta put a face on there, so I'm gonna put my cousin on there. You know, she's a nice lady, I'm gonna put her up there. Yeah, you know, everybody will know and they'll see her and say, hey, look, it's Betty. That personalizes it, that limits it. You take the face out, it's no longer recognizable, it's no longer something you're comfortable just walking up to and understanding and thinking you understand. Effacing the face makes it something that you have to think about. It distances you. It objectifies itself. Interesting concept. My personal favorite. This lady. Again, another leap in time. This is the dancing girl coming in at a total of 4 inches or 4.1 inches. That's it. The other one was 4.4. So this is smaller yet. Roughly 2500 BCE, found in the Indus River Valley within modern Pakistan, bordering Afghanistan and northern India. What do we think of this lady? I like her. I want to party with this chick. Anybody? Anybody? Yes. What's your name again?
Lydia?
Hi, Lydia.
I think looks like Egyptian person representing because of the ornaments on the hands.
She has some what looks to be perhaps tribal cultural jewelry.
And also the eyes, like the way they portrayed the Egyptian people before.
Maybe, yeah. Anybody else?
What material is that? Is it bronze?
Let me see if I have that note. I do not have that note. You search dancing girl, you know, Indus River Valley in Google, maybe you can find it.
The material they use is kind of shiny, so we can talk about their kind of advanced technology of what can do whatever it is. And I noticed that her left hand is kind of.
She has a freakishly long left arm.
Yeah.
Both her arms are quite long.
It seems like on her hand is like a circle for rings. And I know nowadays, currently, some African communities, they use rings to extend their bodies.
Sure.
Body parts. So they can be made intentionally because they maybe traded long hands as some kind of beauty.
Mm-hmm. This is a it might have some religious value to it. I'm not sure. This could be a different version of a icon of fertility of some sort. Very different than the Venus. Certainly, yeah, there are some, the long arms are kind of bizarre, especially considering she appears to have no neck at all. I think we can all agree that those legs are kind of skinny too. And yet her arm is rough. This arm, without the rings, is roughly the width of her torso, which is freakish. But yeah, maybe this is setting a kind of value for human beauty, for female desirability, maybe. I don't know what the long arms are supposed to do, if it's intentional or not. Maybe, like effacing the face, maybe it's just another way of distancing you from it and saying, well, okay, no matter what, this is not just an ordinary person. This is something a little different.
I also want to point out, like, this stand she has kind of looks like an empowerment stand, like, kind of like empowering, like if the woman should be empowered, something like that. But like it's like more of what we call powerful stand. Like,
Yeah.
it's not like just like just sitting or laying down. It's more
The
like-
stance is my favorite part.
Yes.
Gotta tell you, I like this girl. The other one, Venus, all right, you know, sure. Fertility goddess, yada, yada, yada. This chick's got attitude. Got a face, you can read a personality there, and the stance is you can read the stance. The stance has humanity baked into it. This is not a goddess figure who does this. And if it is, that's the goddess I want to know. Because this is somebody who has some life in her, some personality, something that you can approach, something that reaches out to you on a human level and lets you say that we're all basically the same, you know? This is 5,000 years ago, and yet it looks like every girl I ever approached in a bar when I was single. It's that defiance, that self-assertion, that insistence on her own value that is impressive. And I'm saying all of this without knowing that much about the Indus River Valley of 5,000 years ago. I'm just looking at this and trying to conjure up some sort of meaning. I'm trying to come to an idea of how to understand this. I can go Google the bejesus out of this. I can go and read my way through a couple of shelves of the New York Public Library about this point in history and this culture. I can buy a ticket to Pakistan and actually walk the ground where this was found and try and get a sense of, you know, she looks like she's had a hard day. And maybe that part of the world is particularly, you know, brutal in the weather right then. And she's just had it. All of that can inform what I'm saying. But let's be clear, I have no intention of doing any of that. Because I got other things to do. But for right now, I can look at this and start to get a sense of it. And that is, well, it's fun. But it's also practice for reading. Because everything that we see is going to have different things that we can grab onto. Different little oddities and quirks that at first we have no idea what they mean. But if we just spend a second and dwell on it and try and make something out of it, it makes it more rewarding. And it basically sharpens your teeth. In all of this, we're not talking too much about the people who actually carved these things. Even when we were talking about the 400 hours thing for Lowenmensch, it's fun to say. I suggested that it could have been, you know, sort of like a tag team effort. This is a way of reading not just the individual artist, but of reading the culture that produced it. Because it's not just the producing of the material, but these things are all fairly fragile and small, and they're really easy to lose or to have broken. And the fact that we have them at all from so many thousands of years ago is really kind of a miracle. But it's a miracle that is human in its foundation. Because somebody took great care of this for at least a little while. Somebody carried it from place to place when they were moving around. Lowenmensch was found in a cave. We don't know if it was carved in that cave. Maybe it was. Maybe it came from a cave down the block. Maybe it came from a cave a couple of miles away. Maybe it came from a cave on the other side of the mountains. We don't know. It's the culture that produces the art. Especially when we're talking about very old stuff, we can use that then as a way to understand not just the art, but the culture. Here, I want to try and assure you guys, again, as accounting and finance majors, I am not going to demand that anybody assess the beauty of art, that anybody resound to the perfection of the artistic representation. If you don't like it, it doesn't matter. Beauty is extraordinarily subjective. What I am trying to do with this class is give you a sense of the history. I can't make you like something. I can't make you think something is beautiful. I'm going to try and point out along the way what I think is beautiful. Again, the tude. You gotta love it. But I am only going to try and walk you through the development of art over, a few thousand years. You determine yourselves what you find inspiring or beautiful. I'm here to just sort of nudge you along the way and expose you to it. I don't care, well, I care a little, how much you love any of it. Okay. Let's take a look at the book a little bit. I won't get too detailed because I know, following along, it's early. Maybe you haven't gotten the book yet. Hymn to Aten. I think it's the very first thing in this anthology. It was found inscribed on a tomb in Egypt. It is estimated to be, I know this, roughly 13th century BCE, so, about 15,000 years ago. It's carved on a tomb, so, they're not going crazy with the words, but they have 6 whole stanzas in celebration of the sun god Aten. Hence, Hymn to Aten is a song of praise to Aten. You are the greatest. Everything flows from you, Aten. Aten, you are number one. You are the best. It is remarkable in its expression of Aten as a presence in everyday life, The Song of Praise praises Aten's effect on the crops, on ships sailing north and south, on trade, on commerce, on villages and towns and other local municipal levels of government. Aten is on the nitty-gritty level of human life. Everywhere. Everything stems from Aten. Now you can point out that, well, wasn't this another polytheistic thing where they had a lot of gods? And yeah, you'd be right. But here, as in many other cases, you can recognize multiple gods, but still have your favorite. You know? I will watch the Super Bowl, even though my team is not in it. If my team was in it, I would feel better about it, and I'd be more invested. So you get 6 long stanzas of how great Aten is, how inspiring, how miraculous a presence on earth it is. And that in itself is, I'm sorry to use this word, quite beautiful. Evidence of the divine in everyday life, in the efforts of a farmer, the efforts of a tradesman, ordinary life, getting up out of bed. You're told it's all because of Aten. It's nice to know that, you know, the big guy's looking out for you. But look what happens in the last stanza. You are in my heart. This is addressing Aten. There is no other who knows you. Only your son, Neferkapure, soul of one ray. You were the only one? Oh, but you have a son? Whom you have taught your ways and your might, those on earth come to your hand as you made them. When you have dawned, they live. When you set, they die. Again, sort of shifting the focus back onto Aten. But what was that bit about the sun? I don't know. You yourself are a lifetime. One lives by you. Blah, 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 blah. When you rise, you stir everyone for the king. Spoiler alert, the king's name is Neferkapure. When you rise, you stir everyone for the king. Think of the accumulated effect here of long stanzas celebrating the grandness and majesty of Aten, the all-powerful presence. But if you call the number and he's not there, the king is going to pick up the phone. As long as you are worshiping Aten, you're basically worshiping the king, because, you know, he's a son, and it's all the same. So all of the authority invested in the figure of Aten should really be funneled through the king. As an average person, the kind that was sort of referenced in the earlier stanzas, the ones who were doing the farming and the commerce and municipal levels of government and all the little tedium things, are you more or less likely to complain about the king if you know he's a stand-in for God? It's a neat little bait and switch. Oh, Aten, you are everything. But the king is everything too. Listen to the king. You're talking to the king, you're talking to me. He's my guy. Then, as a little shout out to not just the king, but the entire royal family, the entire aristocracy, if you will, toss in the queen, Nefertiti. It's a name some people know and have no idea where it's from. Isn't that amazing how a work of art seems to be telling you to stay in line. Not rock the boat. Not complain about, things could be better. Streets are a little dirty. Who's going to do something about that? Oh, you're the king and your father is God, so I shouldn't complain to you. This is below your pay grade. Okay, I'm just going to get back in line now. I'll be a good boy. This is carved on a tomb. Very deliberate, very labor intensive. Somebody wanted this message to be perpetuated. Enuma Elish, I believe the second work in this book. I promise we will pick up the pace as we go along. And we're not doing the whole book, obviously. Enuma Elish, as this says, Babylonian creation epic. If Hymn to Aten is centered in Egypt, this is Babylon, modern Iraq. Just next door, down the road. Babylonian creation epic. When on high, which is really just a translation of Enuma Elish. When on high. They didn't really have titles back then. When on high, no name was given to heaven, nor below was the netherworld called by name. Primeval Apsu was their progenitor, and matrix Tiamat was she who bore them all. They were mingling their waters together. No canebrake was intertwined, nor thicket matted close, when no gods at all had been brought forth, nor called by names. Sorry about the cursor. None destinies ordained. Then were the gods formed within these two. So they're starting off big. I do not speak or read ancient Akkadian, so I'm kind of struggling with just having the words to go by here. Significantly also, in the original, we have just sort of fragments. This is very ancient writing, basically carved into rocks or stuck with cuneiform clay, and so it's fragile. So every word we have is precious, and every word we have was cared for. No name was given to heaven. Why begin something like that? Why would we care that no name was given?
Because it shows like there was a long time ago, a very, very long time ago, that long that they didn't even have names, like for heaven.
We're talking about then were the gods formed. So this is what you would call a theogony, a birth of the gods. So yeah, we're not really dealing with, established names or even languages at this point.
Is it because the God will give the name to the heaven?
Well, we're talking about, this is a pretty rigorous polytheistic world where there are multiple gods, and they talk about none of the gods, plural. So there are lots of gods to be out there, but what they're talking about is a kind of undifferentiated chaos. Now, to name something is to sort of organize it a little, to put it in a frame of reference. When on high, no name was given to heaven, nor below was the netherworld called by name. That means chaos. It was just soup. The world itself was chaos. Primeval Apsu was their progenitor, and matrix Tiamat was she who bore them all. Now, in short elements, it's very difficult to follow this, but Significantly, Apsu is essentially a river god, and I'm using the word he because he's a guy. River god. Tiamat is, in this iteration, the ocean. Now, Apsu was their progenitor, the parent. She who bore them, another parent, the mother. The mother bears the children. They were mingling their waters together. That's not a euphemism. The ocean and the river. Think about the river flowing into the ocean. I'm not going to go any further down that kind of imagery, but it is what it is. Significantly, however, I will ask you to consider rivers tend to create life. Civilizations spring up around rivers. Rivers often provide fresh water. Certainly, even if it's a little brackish, they will produce vegetation. Rivers are invariably, especially in this corner of the world, modern Iraq is very warm. Rivers are good. Water is important. The ocean, the sea, technically not an ocean there. Not a lot of oceans bordering Iraq. The ocean, a little less so. Can't drink it. Can be very rough. Can kill. Threaten. There are monsters in an ocean. Tiamat, later on, will take the form of a sea monster. Not just the ocean, but a monster. Everybody likes rivers, and that's the guy. Those pesky, tempestuous oceans, however, that's the female. I wonder if we'll see something like that again, where the women are the troublemakers. They mix together, they create the gods. The gods then are born from nature. These are two primeval gods who do a little nookie nookie and give birth to the gods. Those gods later on, this doesn't get into in our little selection, those gods later on will rebel against the parent gods and the existing social order in a vicious and bloody civil war. Generational fighting. Anybody who has a parent has experienced this. I have kids, I'm getting the brunt end of it right now. But I'll give you one guess as to which of the two primeval gods is the traitor who inspired this bloody civil war. What?
Is it upset? Is it
Close.
Tiamat?
Yes.
Yeah.
Excellent deductive skill. Again, I'm just noticing a pattern. I'm not an expert in any way, but it's the woman who starts all the trouble. Bitches be crazy, right? Don't mind me. I'm just yabbering. Okay. Tablet 5. Where this one? Okay. This, as I said, is a Babylonian creation. Babylon is a city in modern Iraq. and it became the great civilization of the Tigris-Euphrates River Valley. And here, in a world where there are multiple gods out there, one rises to the fore. One is sort of set apart, specialized, and he is designated as, he's the top guy. Yeah, you know. Lots of lesser gods out there. You know, sure. Junior god in training. Hello. Yeah, aren't you impressed? No, really. Where's your boss? Marduk is the patron god of the city of Babylon. And wouldn't you know it, Babylon singles him out as he's really the best god. Again, think in terms of sporting analogies. I'm a guy, I have to make those from time to time. Sporting analogies, okay, the entire NFL is great, but the Giants are, let's face it, the best. Your guy just happens to be the top guy. So what does that say about, well, your city? It's the best, of course. Curious power structure. The gods favor Babylon. So everybody from anywhere else, everybody from anywhere else should really just, kind of defer to what Babylon says. Babylon has an idea. All right, tell me how to do things. I'm fine with that. You let me know. How are you doing this? And I'll do that. Oh, you want us to pay a little bit more in tribute or in taxes or something like that to Babylon, even though you guys are way out there, we're not going to see any of the benefits? Sure, we can do that. Because your God's the top guy. Power. We will be talking an awful lot about power. The other gods naturally fall in line behind him. Specifically, we can see also Marduk says, where to go? I shall establish my kingship. When you go up from Apsu to assembly, he's talking to all the gods. You're all going to get together and talk about, how to run the world and universe and all that stuff. Great. That's what gods do. Yeah. Let your stopping places be here before your assembly. When you come down from heaven to assembly, let your stopping places be there to receive all of you. I shall call its name Babylon. So now, it's not only just, sort of a sentimental favorite, but it's the way station before the gods go up and do the god thing. And it's where they come back and they, rest up again after they've gone to their assembly up in the heavens. So Marduk is saying that, all right, Babylon is where it's all happening. You want to be close to the power center of the universe? You want to be in touch with gods? Gotta come here. This is the room where it happens. Oh, we are just flying through this. Can I spin this? I don't think so. All right, I don't really care. Feel free to crane your neck. This is just a short little burst. You know what? Well, the only important line is, I shall compact blood, I shall cause bones to be, I shall make stand a human being, let man be his name. So that's how we all got here. I personally find it interesting that the divine powers think in terms of blood and bones when they're imagining how to create a man, a human being. They're not thinking of, well, first we need to fashion a circulatory system, and then, major digestive and nervous systems, all of that complicated stuff. Blood and bones. What would the average anatomical knowledge be in the ancient world about what's going on in the oogie parts? Blood and bones. When you come across, when you're out wandering around in the wilderness, let's say you're going hunting, and you come across a pile of goo, and, that's my cousin Eddie. Looks like the jackals got him, and the vultures, and maybe a few little mice too. All I see is blood and bones. That's my knowledge base. They're not talking about, clearly his pancreas has been, torn in half. Blood and bones, basic level. You can start to draw an image of the culture and their anatomical expertise. I shall create humankind. Ambitious. I tried saying that in a college interview once. It didn't go well. They didn't believe me. I'm still working on it, tinkering. They shall bear the gods' burden that those, meaning the gods, shall rest. Bear the gods' burden. What does that mean? What does it mean to bear a burden? It's not that complicated. This is relatively modern English. Yeah.
If something's bothering them, it will impact the other people too, like the burden. Or there will be never mind.
No. What is a burden?
It is something that bothers you.
Something that bothers you.
Yeah.
Something that is difficult.
Yes.
Okay. To bear a burden is what?
To experience something. No, to
Physically?
not necessarily.
Physically means to carry it.
Oh, okay.
Etymologically, from language, to bear means to carry. And then you can start to extrapolate, representationally. But to carry a burden. You have a burden. That backpack looks heavy. I'm going to carry it for you because I saw, it's hard getting around. I'm going to bear your burden. In this sense, to bear the burden of the gods. What do you think that could mean? Yeah! Come on!
That's to believe in them.
To believe in them?
No. I'm not sure.
I got a heavy backpack. I don't give a damn if you believe in me. I want you to carry it. In the back.
Is it like bearing? It's like the thing with the God's son, where the God isn't here, but I'll take care. I'll do his duties. Basically.
Kind of. Yeah.
Just doing the hard parts.
Doing the grunt work.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm a god. I don't want to do paperwork. I don't want to have to fetch my own drinks. Come on. Get me some underlings. Create an entirely new species of bipedal morons who will go around and do all the crap I just don't want to do. That's how my wife looks at me. I'm there as an assistant. Humankind was created to do the grunt work for the gods. Humankind born as slaves. The authority structure is supposed to be separate. Not supposed to, dirty their hands with the petty details of running a world. And we're not supposed to question that at all because we're just the servants. The authority figures, the gods, are above us. And we are not to make any demands on them. Our role, as described by divine sanction, our role is to serve. so that the gods can rest, do other godly things, you know? Go on elaborate vacations. Maybe send out a photograph of them sunning themselves on a beach in Saint-Tropez. And we're supposed to see that and say, okay, that's good. They're the gods, that's their role. My role is to do the work and not complain. If you were, let's say, a king, the representative of the divine order on earth, that whole don't bother with the authority figures thing would come in pretty handy. Gives you a nice excuse to, well, my job is to rest. Your job is to, take care of all the crap. You know, serve me unquestioningly. It's good to be you. I don't think I have an image of this, but tablet 7. Well, the back end of tablet, this is 6 that we're looking at one point says, then make Babylon the task that you requested, let its brickwork be formed, build high the shrine, the Enuma god set to with hoes. 1 full year they made its bricks. When the 2nd year came, they raised the head of Izagila, the counterpart to Apsu. They built the upper ziggurat of Apsu. What's going on there? Yes?
So it's like they started building, like the other humans that they created started building things unquestionably. They made an Apsu shrine and all that stuff.
Yeah, they're building a city.
Building Babylon.
Yeah, the city of Babylon. That's an odd detail to really include, though. Why? Why would you include details of, let's face it, city planning? Why the focus? This survives over several thousand years. It's very labor intensive to write and to preserve. Obviously, this is written in different tablets, different chunks of stone that come to us. So even within the broader story, they're saving this part for some reason. Why? These seem like pretty petty details. You can have any details in the world. Why those? Yes?
Didn't they believe that Babylon was like sacred? So like the beginning of it kind of important.
Yeah. The founding is always important. The founding is going to be significant. This is how we founded this great civilization. And it says that the gods gave you the plan. The gods were special, or saw Babylon as special. So much so that they drew up blueprints. I can see the gods lining up with golden shovels and little hard hats and posing for the grip and grin photos. But it's a focus on building as well, a focus on work, because this is being told just like for the power structure, for, an effect on the readers and the people who would hear this, which is another thing we'll get into. But it's meant to coerce behavior or interpretation a little, tell you what is valuable. The power structure is valuable to these people. They place a high value on authority. What else is valuable to this civilization that we just read? Yes?
I mean, like the worship of gods, the hierarchy.
Yeah, they're building the The ziggurat is a part of a temple, essentially. They're building that stuff. But they're building it.
Oh, manual labor.
Manual labor! Work! We've already been told that human beings are here to work. If you're running a civilization, what do you really want your people to do more than anything else? Do you want them to worship gods? Well, sure. That's nice. If everybody could be pious at heart. But what really helps you on a practical level? To do the work. I don't really know what's going on in your heart. I don't really care. But I want to see you work. Because when you show up to build something, to build a city, I can do something with that. If you're just going to go off in the wilderness and, sing a song of praise to God and feel personally fulfilled in that, fully for you, it really doesn't affect me at all. You're just kind of a non-entity at that point. The king will want workers because a civilization is built brick by brick, and they mention bricks. It's the kind of detail that you tend to gloss over, and why is that there? And who knows? Skip past it. It's those little moments that sneak in and tell you this is what this is really about. Let's just stop, because all of these details are deliberate, and they're trying to shape how you perceive them and the world around you. Because they want you to work. All right, I just want to touch very quickly. I know what time it is. Tablet 7, for those of you who have the book or can Google this, it is eminently Googleable. Composition and purpose of this text, its approval by Marduk, is the summation. And it starts out, which says, they must be grasped by the first one, should reveal them. The wise and knowledgeable should ponder them together. The master should repeat and make the pupil understand. The shepherd and the herdsman should pay attention. He must not neglect Enlil of the gods, Marduk, so his land may prosper and he himself be safe. His word is truth. What he says is not changed. So, the portrait of civilization that this is laying out, it's important that it be perpetuated, that it be studied and understood and perpetuated, because it will not change. Will not change. Everybody listens to it, which of course we all know because the Babylonian Empire is still in charge today of the world, right? Well, things go sideways sometimes. But if you're a king at that time, you don't want anybody messing with that. You don't want anyone challenging that. You don't want anyone thinking that, well, all right, yeah, fine. Maybe this is just a story, though. Maybe this isn't how the world came to be. No! This is how it is. A little paranoia going on there. A little anxiety. I'm not going to toss out the word propaganda, but it's kind of propaganda. Because this is art with a political end. You can talk about it, as we did earlier, about how, well, this is evidence of the gods coming down into earth, into nitty-gritty levels. Brickwork, concerned with the laying out of the city. The inspiration of worship within the human population. It does all of that, and it is beautiful for that. A vision of divine presence in the nitty-gritty details of life. But it also has a socio-historical significance that I would say is more valiant. Slightly more popular word? I don't know. Genesis. First books of the Hebrew Bible. Very famous story, creation of the world, Adam and Eve, yada, yada, yada. Lots of people hear this, like I said, from their grandmother, and you don't really stop to see what is really going on here. And it can be weird, very weird. When God began to create heaven and the earth, this translation is slightly different than this one. I'm going to stick with this one, but you can follow along with this if you want. This is by Robert Alter, the one in the book, who just published a full version of it, but he's been spitting out little chunks of the Hebrew Bible for decades now, and it's a masterpiece. Largely for the way it strips away a lot of the religious incrustations that form on it, the cultural biases that seep into it from different translations. Excuse me. When God began to create the heaven and the earth was then a welter and a waste, and darkness over the deep, and God's breath hovering over the waters, God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. That is very different from what we just read in Enuma Elish, and yet some similarities. Enuma Elish began with chaos. Everything was undifferentiated. Nothing was named. Everything was chaos. Significantly, however, and here this is not my idea, but there's lots of smarty pants people out there, theologians and such, point out that in Enuma Elish, the gods, aside from the primordial Apsu and Tiamat, the gods are born out of nature. The river and the ocean mix and form the gods. Gods are born from nature. So they are within nature. They are subject to it. You have multiple gods, and they are all sort of limited in that capacity. Here, God pre-exists nature. God controls nature, if you will. God creates nature. God began to create heaven and earth, and the earth was then a welter and a waste, and darkness over the deep, and God's breath hovering over the waters. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Creation is also a singular act here. Before, it was Apsu and Tiamat. And, they both got together, put on some records, poured a little wine, and got mixing. And thus, the earth. Here, this is a simple act of will. God doesn't, impregnate anyone. God simply creates. God is superior to those laws of birth and nature that the rest of us are all subject to. God said, "Let there be light," and there was light, and God saw the light and said that it was good. It was good. And this will be repeated several times. God is essentially creating something that is wholly good in itself. When you have multiple gods, and again, this is not my idea, this is coming from another guy. When you have multiple gods, some of them tend to be good, some of them not so much. Some of them can be really quite, dickish from time to time, creating problems, stirring up trouble, being just, really evil, starting wars, what have you. But then there are good gods to balance them out, so that's sort of like the struggle. It's like good and bad and good and evil, and they struggle, and in the end, things work out how they work out. What are you going to do? There's no moral quality to any of it. But here, this God, this reality, this understanding of the universe is essentially moral. It is good. I don't want to dwell too much in there, but he creates a succession of natural entities. He creates the light to begin with, divides the light from the darkness. He divides the land from the sea. He creates birds. He creates creatures that crawl on the ground. He distinguishes one from the other, creates individuals within that. He distinguishes everything one from the other. Of each kind is repeated. And then he gets to, well, I've been practicing with all this other stuff, now it's time to go really big. And there is a sense of progression, like each day he gets up and he makes something new that is more sophisticated and of a higher order than what came before. Until he comes to and he says, okay, it's time to make a human being. And he makes a human, which is the word Adam. And we just sort of slap the name on, say, oh, Adam. And it becomes a name. What does he do after he makes Adam? What? He makes Eve. Depending on the version you're reading, and there are two very distinct versions of the creation in there, which is always kind of weird to see. It's like, wait a minute, Grandma didn't tell me that. He creates Eve. If the beginning of creating nature and then the animals and the birds and all of this is sort of a progression of perfectionism, and then he gets to Adam and then goes from Adam and creates Eve, what does that say about Eve?
Eve is better.
Eve is better! Of course! Sorry, guys. We're the beta version. You know it's true. Look in the mirror. We all know it. Women are better. I will say that as fact because I have a wife and 3 daughters and I get beat up if I don't. I have a wife and 3 daughters. Pity me. Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve. What do we know about Adam and Eve? What?
She was created from his bone.
From his rib.
Yeah, from his rib.
What does that tell you?
She's a part of him.
Yeah. Maybe it means that she is subordinate to him. I don't know. Maybe she is a fraction of him. Maybe. There are some who say that, well, just the positioning is odd. Why the rib?
Yeah.
I don't look at a rib and think, I'm handy. I can make a human being out of that. Why the rib? Well, it's the side.
Side design.
Standing next to one another. Perhaps, don't strike me down, as equals. Significantly, she was not made out of his foot, where he would be expected to be standing on her the whole time. She was not born of his head. Like Athena in the Greek tradition springs from the head of Zeus and is from then on known as reason, logic. She is an intellectual sort. Eve is made from the rib, so maybe they're supposed to stand side by side as equals. Maybe. A fair number of people have been trying to beat down that interpretation for, a few millennia now. But it's a fair interpretation. Maybe it's BS? I don't know. Again, clearly, women are better. Yeah.
I was thinking maybe because your ribs protect your heart?
Maybe. That's very poetic. I like that. Yeah. The ribs are essential for life. You are too vulnerable without it. She is created in this translation as I think a sustainer or an aid to Adam, which automatically suggests a sort of subordinate position, you know, kind of like being a slave. But that's a little complicated. Significantly, however, Adam and Eve were both created as something special. God was creating a progression of stuff that he always designates as good, essentially good. And it all seems to be getting more refined and more sophisticated so that Adam and Eve are seen as the pinnacle, and they are then tasked with dominion. Take care of this world, basically, is what God is saying. Not be a servant. Not do my grunt work for me. Don't fetch me coffee. You are in charge of the world. You have dominion over the earth and all of the creatures within it. It's a different understanding of humankind's role in the universe. You're no longer just a slave. You're special. And right there, gonna haul out the B word, that's beautiful. The idea that we're created for something other than just brute labor. There are parallel creation stories. They contradict one another in certain key aspects. An important thing to remember about the Bible is that it was never actually, nobody sat down and, I'm going to write the Bible. The Bible is roughly a loose leaf notebook that is carried out over several thousand years. People collecting stories, arranging them, sometimes editing them, throwing certain parts out, prioritizing others, and just carrying that very preciously around the world. Well, around their corner of the world. What's the deal with the fruit? She ate a fruit that was forbidden. She ate the fruit. Troublemaker! Bitches be crazy. God says, you have dominion over everything here. This garden is yours. I always find it also interesting. It's a garden that is imagined as the most perfect place on earth. And it is being imagined by desert nomads. Because, you know, what's a cool place to hang out if you're a desert nomad? Well, you know, some water, some plants, you know, that's nice. We all have different versions of it. Tree of the knowledge of good and evil is one of two trees in this garden. Doesn't sound like much of a garden when you put it that way. Presumably there's other vegetation. What's the other tree? The other tree is always kind of overlooked. It's there, nobody makes a big deal about it. It's not like the star tree, it's a supporting player tree. Come on! Go a little down on the marquee and give some credit. The tree of life. The tree of life. A tradition spanning the entire ancient world, largely. The tree of life. Eat of it, and you have eternal life. No biggie. It just confers that you live forever. I can see why everybody overlooks it and doesn't care. Why would the writers and the editors of the Bible include that little detail if it's never brought up again? Almost never. Hey, how'd that get there? Alright, I don't know where the hell it went. I'm gonna let that crap out. Why?
Well, there are probably the fruits of the one is who, but then Eve, she saw the forbidden one, and she was like, nah, I'm gonna have that one.
Yeah, the human urge for transgression, of being a little naughty. We're all subject to it, and she can be there too.
Maybe they don't mention it anymore because humans are not don't live forever now.
But if they eat from this tree, theoretically they would.
Yeah, but they're not in paradise anymore. They're not in that garden anymore. So
Well, at this point they still are.
oh yeah.
And yes, at this point, because it gets a little naughty in the story, at this point they are still in there. And what I'm asking you to do is slow down your reading, pretend like you don't know where this is going. Oh, she eats an apple? Really? It's not really an apple either. But, you go word for word and try and get through the story that way. If you start to say, well, I know where this is going, I know how it ends, if you know how the movie ends, you can just go out for popcorn 5 minutes in and not come back. You lose out on everything. Follow along and see how the pieces get put together. The tree of life is there and it is completely ignored. But it is included. People dragging around these scrolls that this was originally written on as desert nomads. Imagine that, where you're not lugging around an awful lot. Everything you carry is precious. Everything you carry has a purpose. So extra writing isn't something you're going to prioritize. But the detail that there is the tree of life in there, and that is just put aside. The prospect of immortality is ignored in preference for tree of the knowledge of good and evil, a sort of a knowledge of morality. And what, again, scholars, smarter people than I am, will suggest, some of them, is that this is a hint that the tree of life was a major concern of the ancient world. Many traditions of this period dwell on the idea of immortality, living forever. This wants to be different. Just like carving out a vision of the universe where the universe is good as opposed to a battle between good and evil. This is saying that, okay, in our vision of life, of human purpose on Earth, we don't care about immortality. Living forever is silly and really not something that is something to worry about. But morality? Understanding good and evil? That's something else. That's something everybody's going to have to come up against. That's something that is human. And how just that one little detail can nudge you towards this sort of understanding. So, yes, they eat the fruit. Who does it? Eve. Where'd he go? Now the serpent was most cunning of all the beasts in the field that the Lord God had made, and he said to the woman, though God said you shall not eat from any tree of the garden, And the woman said to the serpent, "From the fruit of the garden's trees we may not eat, but from the fruit of the tree in the midst of the garden, God has said, you may not eat from it, and you shall not touch it, lest you die." Mortality. "For God knows that on the day you eat of it, your eyes shall be opened, and you will become as gods, knowing good and evil." Become as gods. First of all, there's a whole world of meaning in the plural of that word. Become as gods. Does that mean like the gods? Plural? Polytheism? This isn't supposed to be that. But also, we have another sense of challenging, an authority structure. It's not so much that I don't want you to eat that, you're going to get a tummy ache. Or I don't want you to eat that, I was going to make a pie later. I don't want you to do it because that would be a challenge to my authority. I don't want to share my authority. Authority must be respected. Where have we heard that before? I like how Eve cuts off the snake and finishes what he was saying. The snake, well, actually, again, serpent. We don't know if it was a snake. The serpent of some form, a lizard. And Eve jumps in. Says, no. This is what he said. I know where you're going with that. This is what God's rule was. Eve is assertive. Eve has a backbone. Eve is smart. And what do we find out a minute later? Adam is standing right next to her. Next to her. Says, "Buckus." Oh, I'm just sitting here. Eve is having this, very intriguing conversation with this talking serpent. Talking serpents were all over ancient literature. It's a common literary device. And Adam is just sort of sitting there. Adam's a dope. Eve is smart. Eve is interesting. Eve is curious. The serpent is able to seduce Eve, loaded term, by appealing to her curiosity. The knowledge of good and evil. You want to know something. Yeah, we want to know. We want the knowledge. It's a mystery. Curiosity. Is there anything more human? Is there anything more motivating? More dangerous? Eve is far and away the more interesting character here. Adam, he's a guy. He's a meathead. Sorry. Guys. Okay. She decides to eat. She gives the fruit to Adam. Oh, okay. He eats because he's got no backbone. Yes, dear. And the eyes of the two were open and they knew they were naked. Woo! And they sewed fig leaves and made themselves loincloths. Going to a toga party. And they heard the sound of the Lord God walking about in the garden. God has feet. God walks. Interesting. There are different characterizations of God throughout even just these few opening chapters of Genesis. Sometimes he is sort of amorphous and abstract and all-powerful, and other times he's just a dude out for a stroll. Interesting. Multiple authors over many centuries emphasizing different things, and the editors along the way never thought to try and, suture all those up nicely. It's kind of rough humor. Okay. God asks, "What have you been doing?" You're God. Shouldn't you know? You really have to be, brought up to speed. He does. He finds out. He's pissed. Tells the serpent, You know, cursed be you of all cattle and beasts in the field, on your belly shall you go, and dust shall you eat all the days of your life. Well, that's pretty much what it means to be a serpent. So, you know, that explains why serpents are like that. There's a fancy word for that called etiology, an explanation of how things came to be. So the Bible is sort of doing that. And watch how else it does that. Enmity I will set between you and the woman, between your seed and hers. So, you know, girls are afraid of snakes and bugs. I always have to do all the killing in my house when somebody sees a bug. Everybody knows that's just what chicks do. Etiology. Baking into somebody's consciousness a characterization of gender roles. To the woman he said, I will terribly sharpen your birth pangs. In pain you shall bear children. And for the man shall be your longing, and he shall rule over you. He's trying to come up with some way to, you know, hurt Eve, punish her where she lives, you know. And she just showed herself to be this remarkably curious individual, a vibrant personality demanding some personal autonomy in her life. God just looks at her and says, oh, yeah, you're a baby machine, so I'm going to make sure that that aspect of your life is uncomfortable. That's my entire conception of what you can do, what you do, that's you, your role, that's it. Pain in childbirth. Oh, and by the way, listen to the men. Dude's got it. You follow. And to the human. Again, human meaning Adam in the original Hebrew actually means man made of earth or clay. One of the versions in here has God fashioning him of clay. Similar versions all over the place. What is Adam's original sin? According to the text. What is Adam's original sin? Yes.
I think he didn't listen to God's saying, but he listened to Eve.
Okay, interesting.
I would say, yeah, like he followed his life.
Yeah. The original sin is not the eating of the fruit. The original sin, according to the text, the words on the page as they are laid out. And to the human he said, because you listen to the voice of your wife. Oh boy. You listen to your wife? You're hanging out with the guys and you got to call her and say, oh, hon, can I stay out just a little bit longer? No! Because you listened to the voice of your wife. You granted her the value of an opinion. You didn't have the stones to stand up against her and tell her how it is. Because you listened to the voice of your wife. That is the original sin within this sentence. It's the first thing God mentions. God does not speak by accident. And the people who wrote this didn't cart this stuff around, bear this stuff around through centuries by accident in some random order. Every word choice, every arrangement of language, even as it's translated multiple times into multiple different languages, it all has meaning because you listen to the voice of your wife. And it's all over for God right there, or for Adam. Certainly for Eve and all of her descendants. Etiology. E-T-I-O-O-L-O-G. How things got the way they are. Taking basic power structures that you're comfortable with here and fashioning a story that tells you how they came to be and making that story conform to the will of God. Because now it's no longer just, guys like having the final say with the wife. Now it's guys being able to point to, well, look at a story. Look at the Bible. Bible says Eve was the troublemaker because he listened to the voice of his wife. Everything went sideways for mankind from that point on. Therefore, you need to listen to me. I'm the man in this house. Convenient. Shoring up the power structure. Socio-historically, politically, protecting the authority, perpetuating it. These people revered their documents. They carried them through the desert. People of the book, they were called. Protecting it. Because that's how it gets transmitted. Think again, Enuma Elish. They're concerned about how these things get handed down. If you want to be one of us, if you want to be part of our identity, our tribe, this is what we believe. This is who we are. And the only way to do that is by making sure everybody thinks the same way. And this is telling you how to think. This is telling you what the guidelines and boundaries are for humankind. Now, it's very simple to say, well, just thousands of years ago. Come on. What does that really have to do with me? I'm not, this is not, nope, sorry. Grandma might have said something to me, but I don't do that. I'm not a religious type, no. Okay. Even given maybe this is literally true in every way, are other stories that people sell you as true, as real? Stories that perpetuate how things work? Stories that tell you how to perceive the world? Or is that just something that, you're not aware of happening? In a little while in the book, Adam and Eve have kids. Nothing but trouble. They have 2 kids, Cain and Abel. Abel is a herder of sheep. Cain is a tiller of the soil. At a certain point, both bring gifts to God, the best offerings that they could have, kind of a ritualistic, almost cultic sacrifice that they're offering up. And God, for no reason whatsoever, does not explain himself, just says, Abel's is good, Cain's is bad. Abel is favored, Cain is disregarded. Abel is, we don't know that much about him. What do we know about him? A herder of sheep, a shepherd, a nomad. Cain is a farmer, a tiller of the soil. Cain is settled. He stays in one place. You get enough farms together, enough people who are farming within them, they, especially in the ancient world, tended to all live together in one large encampment and then travel out to their fields during the day. And that living together in a large encampment was the first cities. One of Cain's sons is later on credited in the Bible with founding the first city. Cain is a city dweller. Abel is a desert nomad, a herder of sheep. It's a wild coincidence, but the ancient Hebrews were largely nomadic herders, shepherds. So when they're singling out, well, what's the best way to live? What's the way that is favored by God? Herding sheep. Nomadic, don't be too settled. Stay close to yourself in a tribal organization and just keep it tight together. Cain, who kills his brother and is thus the first sign of evil post-Eden, is a city dweller. Think about that as we go into a political season where lots of commercials will be talking about heartland values versus big city people. The heartland, farmers, get a lot of good press. If you're from one of those dirty cities, though, you're suspect. Turn on the TV, those commercials are there. Open up any website that deals with anything political, those commercials are there. They are playing on something very ancient, a suspicion of city dwellers and a somewhat idealized moral valuation of the salt of the earth. They shape the way we think today. They shape the way reality itself is played upon. Being aware that what they're doing only arms you against their doing it. It's very easy to fall for something that somebody's telling you if you've never heard it before. Because you, oh, really? Oh, okay, cities are red. But if you can start to see it, oh, they're playing on that. Oh, I've seen that before. I know what they're really saying. It has a symbolic value. That just protects you because then you can understand what they're doing. Then you can understand how they are trying to guide you, trying to create a certain value system within your perception of the world and trying to shape your behavior. That's fine. They're allowed to do that. Free speech, yada, yada. But do you want to be vulnerable to that, or would you rather see what they're doing? On a very real sense, it comes down to, do you want to be in on the joke, or do you want the joke to be on you? Think about that. And we will see you next week.